In this lesson, we're going to look at the different types of evidence that authors use in their informational writing. Evidence is anything that helps you prove your claim or your topic sentence. In the past, when we use this term, we were referring to only one type of evidence, a quote. Something that looked like this. According to Kathy Saxon, expert on cool teachers, Miss Renike's the coolest, Saxon. In this type of evidence, we are quoting a credible source, and we are writing down what that source said word for word. We're using that source's words to prove our claim or our topic sentence. But that's not the only type of evidence we can use in informational writing. In informational writing, we have lots of different types of evidence that we can use. We're going to use an acronym to help us remember all the different types of evidence that we can gather in our research to help us prove our claims or our topic sentences. The first is facts, examples, anecdotes, or brief, really short stories that help explain the topic sentence. Studies and statistics. When I say studies, I mean that there's a group that has done research on your topic and you're citing what they've found in their research. And then testimony is a quote from an expert or a credible source. So feast. So as I was looking for a topic to model this feast for you today, I started looking at some articles on Newsela, and I found this article on the endangered species, the giant panda, and I love pandas, so I thought that I would write on this, and I actually thought it might be fun for you to write about endangered species today as well for your flash draft, so you'll get a chance to do that as well. So what I did first was I looked at the article, and I started to look for a claim, something that I could argue, something that I could prove through the evidence that I found. So the claim that I came up with from reading the article, you want to choose something really small and specific, was that habitat destruction is one of the biggest dangers for the giant pandas. So that was the claim that I came up with. So I started by reading through the article and looking for facts that helped me understand this claim. So I found a variety of different facts on how habitat destruction really endangers the pandas. I learned a lot. Then I went and I started doing a little bit more research, and I started looking I first found some studies and statistics, and I found this great source, and I want you to notice that when I'm citing a source, because we're not going to actually write down the sourcing information in this activity, I'm just writing the last name of the author or the source. For example, up here I didn't have an author for the Newsela article, so it was from Gale was the newspaper, so I just cited that. So I found some great studies and statistics about habitat destruction. I found an example, a place in central China where there once was giant pandas, where they once were really prevalent, and then now because of habitat destruction, they've really been extinct. And then I found some testimony, some expert from credible sources, and I want you to notice that my credible source is actually a professor in environmental science at Chinese Academy. So I'm really quoting an expert in the field. So now what I'm going to do is I took all of my evidence, and I'm not going to use all of it in supporting my claim that habitat destruction is one of the biggest dangers for giant pandas. I'm just going to use some of it because I also want to include my own elaboration or explanation, my own words. So I'm going to read through and talk you through my couple of paragraphs that support this claim, and I want you to notice how much evidence I include, and then also how I explain that evidence, how I elaborate on that evidence. So I'm going to start with my first paragraph, and my first paragraph starts with my claim. Habitat destruction is one of the biggest dangers for giant pandas. So I'm going to start with one of my studies and statistics that I found, and this was from Sean Gallagher, researcher for the Pulitzer Center in China, and I had to go back to the article to look at who Sean Gallagher was, so that's something you might need to do. According to Sean Gallagher, researcher for Pulitzer Center in China, habitat that meets the needs of giant pandas has been declining. And here's his actual words. I'm going to quote him. Overall habitat area decreased by 21% since 1988, and the average size of the continuous habitat decreased by more than 13% in the same period. And I want you to notice that I'm still citing my source. So after that quote, I'm not putting a period at the end. I'm taking away that period, and in parentheses, I'm putting the author's last name and then a period afterwards. But now I actually need to explain this evidence. I can't let this evidence speak for itself. So I'm going to explain it. I'm going to elaborate on it. The majority of giant pandas inhabit the dense bamboo and coniferous or cone-bearing forests in the mountains of central China. Things like logging, agriculture, and urban development have destroyed parts of this forest, making it so that it's broken up into sections. So I've really explained my evidence here. I'm going to add more elaboration or more explanation. Because it's informational writing, remember, I'm going to play with paragraphing. So this is a whole separate paragraph, but it's still supporting my claim that habitat destruction is one of the biggest dangers for giant pandas. But now I'm just explaining or elaborating on this idea a little bit more. A continuous habitat, which Gallagher mentions in this piece of evidence, a continuous habitat is a large area that is not divided into sections. This allows the animals to move freely throughout the whole area. When people started logging sections of the giant panda habitat and building roads through it, it meant that these populations could not move freely throughout the whole area. They got stuck in sections. Imagine that someone built a barrier between each of the rooms in your home and you were suddenly stuck in one room. That is what happened to the giant panda habitat. So notice that even though I have a second paragraph, this is still my own words. I'm still explaining or elaborating on this evidence and this claim or idea. Here's my next paragraph. It's going to include both explanation and elaboration and evidence. Giant pandas need continuous habitat for survival. Because I was moving into talking about why they need continuous habitat for survival, I wanted to make a new paragraph. Giant pandas need a continuous habitat for survival. The forests in central China provide giant pandas exactly what they need, lots and lots of bamboo. Okay, so now I'm actually going to have some of my facts. I'm going to use some of my facts here. And even though these are not quoted word for word, I read over the article and I wrote these in my own words, they're still facts that I learned from this article. So I am going to cite my source here, and they still count as evidence. Bamboo makes up 95% of their diet. However, this plant grows slowly. When giant pandas eat through an area of bamboo, they move on to a new area of the forest. Here's my explanation. If their habitat is divided and they're unable to access another part of the forest, they'll struggle to find enough food to survive. So now I'm going to end with my final paragraph that's going to include both explanation and evidence again. This dividing of the giant panda's habitat has led to decreases in their populations. For example, okay, so now my evidence, rather than citing a source, rather than quoting a source word for word, I'm going to use an example here. So an example of an area of China where we've lost the giant panda because of habitat destruction. For example, giant pandas were common in the, Guizhou and Yunnan provinces as recent as the 1970s. However, logging divided their habitat into small sections. They were suddenly unable to get what they needed to survive. In this area today, giant pandas are rare. And I'm going to end with my concluding sentence, which is going to come back to my claim or my topic sentence. Unless we're able to provide giant pandas with areas that are large enough to sustain their needs, we'll continue to see a drop in populations. So here's what I want you to notice about my paragraph, or my paragraphs, I guess. Because we're writing informational writing, remember you get to play with paragraphing, and you get to break your paragraph up into smaller paragraphs if you want. So what I want you to notice is how much blue is here. Although I found lots of different types of evidence that I could include, I just chose the best evidence. So I actually only included 3 of the pieces of evidence I found. The majority of my paragraph is my own explanation in my own words or my elaboration. So here's your job today. You're going to choose one of the other endangered species, and I have uploaded a variety of different articles on different endangered species from New Zealand. So you're going to read through the article. You're going to decide on a simple claim. Choose something simple like habitat destruction is one of the biggest dangers for giant pandas. Choose something really small that you really can prove with lots of different types of evidence. Then you're going to gather feast. You're going to gather facts, examples, anecdotes, studies and statistics, and testimony. Like me, you may not find all of these different types. You might just find 3 or 4 types, and that's okay. So you're going to find lots of different types of evidence, and I would choose maybe just to do some quick research, maybe find 2 other sources, 1 or 2 other sources that you're using. Don't go crazy on your research because we want you to actually get to writing. Okay, so find a couple. And then you're going to step 3. You're going to use some of the evidence that you gathered to write a few paragraphs that support your claim. It's really important that you make sure that your paragraphs are mostly your own words, your own explanation or elaboration. It should look something like this. Okay, have fun.